Some women make men obsessed. Here's the hidden reason. I remember sitting across from a man, once his fingers nervously tapping his coffee cup. His eyes kept darting to the door, then back to me, as though trying to remember something he'd never known. He whispered, "I don't know why I can't stop thinking about her. She wasn't conventionally beautiful. She didn't have the kind of voice that turned heads, and yet she haunted him." That conversation stayed with me for years, because I knew exactly what he meant. There's something far more primal than curves or confidence, something ancient, invisible, buried in the hidden architecture of the psyche. Most men don't even know what it is, only that they feel it, burning, aching, pulling, and when they meet a woman who touches this hidden part, they don't just feel attraction, they feel recognition. She becomes unforgettable. Not because she plays hard to get to, not because she chases him, but because she awakens something within him he didn't know was asleep. And suddenly, he needs her, not like a lover needs a body, like a soul needs air. Jung spent decades trying to map this realm, the secret places where desire begins. And what he discovered wasn't just scandalous, it was dangerous. He wrote of archetypes that live in every man, triggers buried so deep that to activate them was to summon fire. Most women never find this fire. Some fear it, some fake it, but a few learn to become it. They don't seduce, they mirror, they magnetize, and when that happens, something irreversible takes place in a man. He doesn't fall in love, he falls into longing, and he doesn't even know why. But you will. Carl Jung's forbidden keys to male desire. It starts slowly. A glance that lingers a little too long. A comment he makes and watches you closely after, like he's checking for something. A restlessness in his body, even when he's sitting still around you. What if I told you that wasn't chemistry? It was recognition. Deep inside every man beneath the charm, the restraint, the silence lives a blueprint. An unconscious design of the kind of woman who can wake him up, not just in his body, but in his essence. Carl Jung called it the anima, a mysterious feminine archetype shaped by memories, longings, stories, and shadows. And when a woman reflects that image back to him, whether intentionally or not, it strikes like lightning. He doesn't just want her, he aches for her. But Jung didn't stop there. He documented 6 specific moments where desire didn't just rise, it took over. Moments when a man's sense of self melted and something ancient came through instead. They called this the forbidden psychology. Too powerful, too primal, too raw to teach in schools or sell in books. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. And what you're about to hear isn't just theory. It's lived reality. These are the 6 psychological triggers that awaken a man's deepest, most uncontrollable desire. Not through games, not through manipulation, through truth. Because you don't attract a man by becoming someone else. You attract him by becoming the woman his soul already knows. And I promise, once you understand what I'm about to share, you'll never look at desire the same way again. The shadow sanctuary, where desire begins. There's a reason some women feel like home to a man, not the home that's clean, tidy, predictable, the kind that feels real, where he can collapse into himself and finally take off the damn armor. Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, repress, deny. For men, that shadow is often loaded with feelings they've been taught to fear. Vulnerability, fear, shame, failure. From the time they're boys, men are told, be strong, be composed, be tough. And so they build a mask. It becomes second nature. But behind it, a longing to be seen, not just for what they project, but for what they protect. Here's what most women never realize. When you become a sanctuary for a man's shadow, not a therapist, not a fixer, but a mirror, you unlock something in him that bypasses logic. You make him feel safe to be whole, And that, my friend, is sexy beyond measure. I remember a client, Mariana. She had this gift of being present. When her boyfriend spoke, she didn't just listen, she noticed the small tremble in his voice, the way he avoided certain topics, the flash of shame behind his eyes when he said, "I'm fine." One night, she gently said, "You don't have to pretend with me." She said it like she was telling him the sky was blue. No pressure, no agenda, just truth. He looked at her like she had just opened a locked door inside him, and something shifted. His walls didn't come crashing down. They softened, and for the first time, he told her about his fears of failure. Not to be dramatic, just to breathe. That night, they didn't even touch. But the next day, he told her he'd never felt so close to anyone. This is the paradox. Desire doesn't always begin in the bedroom. Sometimes it begins in the shadows. Old school wisdom says, real men don't cry, but Jung knew better. He wrote that true intimacy begins when we meet each other beneath the mask. And when a man feels that depth of safety, he associates it with desire, not out of weakness, but because finally, he gets to show up without performing. Here's a strange fact. In 1972, researchers discovered that when soldiers returned from war, they were more likely to cry in front of the medics than their wives. Why? Because the medics had seen them bleeding. There was no image to maintain. The same principle applies in love. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present, not just nodding while he talks, feeling him, feeling the silence between his sentences, the way he stiffens when discussing his father, the pause before he says, "I'm okay." And when you stay in that space, when you don't rush to cheer him up, fix him, or change the subject, you become the one person in his life who gives him permission to be whole, and wholeness is what his soul craves, more than breasts, more than flirtation, more than passion. When a woman sees him, all of him, and doesn't flinch, he begins to crave her like water in a desert. This is not a trick. It's a sacred space, and most men have never tasted it. But once they do, they never forget it, and they never forget you, becoming his anima. The feminine image inside him. There's a woman inside every man. Not literally, but psychically. Carl Jung called her the anima, the inner feminine. She is not just an idea. She is a living presence within his unconscious, a composite of every woman he's ever admired, feared, longed for, resented, and dreamed about. Here's the secret. When a woman in the outer world reflects the shape of this inner anima, it strikes a man with such intensity, he often mistakes it for fate. But this isn't destiny, it's psychology. And the anima, she's different for every man. One man may carry the image of the free-spirited wild woman, another, the ethereal mystic, another, the nurturing healer. Some want fire, some want moonlight, most want contradiction. But here's the beautiful twist. You don't have to become someone you're not. You just have to notice how he responds when you show certain parts of yourself. Does he soften when you lean into your intuition? Does he light up when you speak with conviction? Does he grow still when you reveal your gentleness? These are clues revealing the shape of his inner anima. Christina, one of my clients, was 53 when she met a man 10 years younger. At first, she tried to impress him with logic, but he drifted, so she stopped trying. She began to express her mystery, her quiet connection to things unseen. She'd say things like, "Doesn't this place feel like it remembers something?" Or she'd touch his arm just before he spoke, as if tuning into his soul rather than his words. That man told her, "I don't know why, but I feel like you understand parts of me I haven't told anyone." That wasn't magic, it was resonance. The anima is formed during a man's youth, shaped by his mother, sisters, teachers, lovers, movies, songs, and myths. But it evolves, and when a woman aligns with that evolving image, not by performing, but by being deeply attuned, she doesn't become his fantasy. She becomes his reflection, Here's a curious academic debate. Jungians argue whether the anima is projected outward onto women, or whether it seeks integration inside the man. But what they all agree on is this: when a man sees the anima in a woman, he feels a jolt of intimacy so electric it bypasses rational thought. That's why some men say, "I don't know what it is about her," or "she's not my type, but I can't stop thinking about her." It's not about her appearance, it's about who she stirred inside him. Here's a fun side fact. Did you know in the Middle Ages, knights would write love letters to women they'd never met just by hearing a song that reminded them of their anima? Talk about obsessed. This is not about manipulation, it's about attunement. You observe, you feel, you listen. Not just with your ears, but with your body, and then you respond. You don't need to mold yourself into his idea. You let that part of you already aligned with his inner feminine shine a little brighter. You become the woman his soul already holds a space for. And when that happens, something inside him recognizes you, not just as a lover, as a part of him that was always missing. And that recognition, that's when the chase begins, because he doesn't just want you. He wants the part of himself you woke up. The alchemy of contrast, why mystery keeps him coming back. We all know the story. Girl meets guy. He's infatuated. He texts first, shows up early, says she's different. Fast forward 3 months. He's distracted, distant, and somehow not enchanted anymore. What happened? Jung would say, the polarity collapsed. See, the masculine is drawn not to sameness, but to contrast, not to perfection, but to paradox, to the woman who can be both flame and water. He desires the one who makes him wonder, which part of her will I meet today? Let me tell you about my client, Elena. She had been married for 15 years, stable, respectable, predictable, but she came to me with this soft pain in her voice. "He loves me," she said, "but I feel invisible." So we looked closer. Elena had become a single note, practical, responsible, always planning, organizing, managing. She had forgotten how to surprise, not just him, but herself. So she started small, a playful smirk when she would have normally sighed, a silken dress instead of the usual jeans, a long pause before answering his routine questions, just enough mystery to break the script. He noticed, and one night, he said, "I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time again." That's the alchemy of contrast. It's not about faking moods or playing games. It's about honoring the multitudes inside you, because you are not one thing either. You are sacred and sensual, grounded and cosmic, stillness wrapped around a thunderstorm. And when you let those different aspects breathe, he can't stop breathing you in. Old school wisdom used to say, men like women who are predictable, but Jung shattered that myth. He believed that male libido responds to duality, to the union of opposites, the fierce lover who also knows how to disappear into silence, the maternal nurturer who becomes his wildest passion, the grounded realist who dreams like a poet. Here's a strange little side fact. Did you know some ancient tantric traditions warned men not to bond with women of contrast because they feared it would turn into obsession? They were right. It does, because contrast is magnetic. It hints at something unfixed, unknowable. It makes a man want to learn you, not label you. One academic paper on symbolic femininity called this volatility of archetypal engagement. Translation: mystery keeps the masculine mind lit. Let me be clear. This isn't about chaos. This is about wholeness. Permission to embody all that you are without trimming your edges for comfort. When a man feels all your flavors, your moods, your sacred contradictions, he stays curious. And when he stays curious, he stays connected. Because here's the truth. Men aren't bored by women. They're bored by predictability. And that's not your fault. It's just a signal to let another layer of you come out to play. Because inside you lives 1,000 women, and he longs to meet all of them, especially the ones you've been taught to hide. When you embrace your own range without apology, you become the mystery he chooses to unravel, over and over again, calling out his hero, a mirror to his greatness. There's something sacred that happens when a woman truly sees a man, not just his charm, not just his strengths, but his essence, especially the part of him that longs to rise. Carl Jung believed every man carries within him the archetype of the hero, a primal force, a deep longing to overcome, to become, to matter. But here's what most people misunderstand. This heroic archetype isn't about being a warrior or provider. It's not about muscles or bravado. It's about meaning. Every man wants to feel like his life stands for something, that he's capable of facing life's dragons and walking out alive with purpose. When a woman mirrors this hero back to him subtly, sincerely, without flattery, he doesn't just feel appreciated. He feels activated. He begins to see himself through her eyes. And if she sees greatness, he'll chase it. Let me tell you about Tiana. She'd been with her partner for 11 years. And somewhere along the way, her vision of him had dimmed. She saw his bad habits, his small thinking, his withdrawn moods. But through our work together, she began to shift. She stopped pointing out what he wasn't doing and started quietly reflecting what he was. She would say things like, "You're the kind of man who doesn't quit, even when it gets hard. I respect that." Or, "I know it's a tough day, but I trust how you always find your way." No praise, no manipulation, just truth. Something awakened in him. He started dressing better. He became more affectionate. He even picked up a passion project he'd buried 10 years ago. She didn't change him. She called him forward. And that, right there, is the power of the inner hero. Jung warned about this archetype. He wrote that when a man finds a woman who sees his inner hero, he forms a psychic bond that is nearly unbreakable. It's not ego, it's evolution. Because when you become the mirror for his courage, his devotion, his integrity, he wants to rise to meet that reflection, not to win you, to deserve you. This isn't about playing small to make him feel big. You don't have to diminish your power to elevate his. In fact, the opposite is true. When a powerful woman sees a man's hero without emasculating or rescuing, she becomes the only place where he feels fully seen and profoundly challenged. Here's a curious oddity. In Norse mythology, warriors weren't honored by kings. They were honored by priestesses, women who could see their soul's glory beyond their wounds. The warriors would fight for that gaze. And it's the same today. A man who is seen in his purpose, his potential, his unproven greatness, feels summoned by her presence. There's an academic term called idealizing transference, which describes how people often become who they're treated as. When you treat a man like he's already the man he could be, he moves toward it. Because we all rise to the reflection we believe is real. So what does this mean for you? Don't fake admiration. Don't inflate his ego. Find what is heroic in him, however small, and honor it. That flicker of resilience, that moment of honesty, that silent strength when things fall apart. Name it, reflect it. Let him feel your belief in who he is becoming. Because when a man feels truly witnessed by a woman, not for what he does, but for why he does it, he binds to her soul, not because she flatters him, because she reminds him of his own greatness. And when that happens, desire becomes devotion, the portal to transcendence. Why sex isn't just physical. There are moments in a man's life when he encounters something so profound, so holy, it breaks him open. Sometimes that moment is in nature, sometimes in grief, and sometimes it's in the arms of a woman. Carl Jung believed that male sexual desire, at its core, is not just physical, it's spiritual. He wrote that the deeper layers of male libido are searching not for pleasure, but for union, not just with a body, but with something vast, eternal, and unnameable. That's why the fifth trigger is not about technique. It's not about what you do. It's about what you embody. The woman who becomes a portal to transcendence doesn't perform. She inhabits. She becomes fully alive in her body, in her breath, in her sacred feminine presence. And in doing so, she gives him access to a forgotten world. Let me introduce you to Clara Ara. She was 49 when she came to me, tired of feeling empty after every relationship. She'd done the wine, the candles, the flirtation, but something was always missing. Through our work, she began to reconnect with her body, not as an object to be desired, but as a living temple. She stopped doing intimacy and started being in it. She breathed more deeply. She moved more slowly. She allowed her own pleasure to arise, not from performance, but from presence. And when she met someone new, something shifted. Their first time together, she didn't rush. She didn't hide. She welcomed the moment, without trying to control it. Later, the man told her, "I don't know what just happened, but I feel like I just touched something eternal." That's transcendence. Academic debates often reduce sexuality to biology or evolutionary drives, but Jung disagreed. He saw sexuality as symbolic, a doorway into the soul's desire for union and wholeness. And when a man feels that doorway open, not just lust, but liminality, he becomes captivated. Here's an odd little fact. In ancient Egypt, sex wasn't considered dirty or casual. It was part of temple rituals. Priestesses were trained to bring men into altered states, states that healed, awakened, transformed. You don't need to be a priestess, but you are sacred. The portal opens when you remember that. When you stop measuring your desirability by size, symmetry, or style, and begin to feel the truth of your body, the hum of your breath, the fire of your longing, the silence in your hips. When you enter the moment with full reverence for your own being, you awaken something in him that feels eternal. Because here's the secret. A man does not remember the night you wore red lingerie. He remembers the moment you looked into his eyes. And he forgot who he was, not because you took him, but because you met him spirit to spirit. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not how you moan, not how you move, but how you merge. The woman who becomes a portal to transcendence doesn't offer sex. She offers sacredness, a sense that this moment, with her, is outside of time, and through her presence, he tastes something he spent his whole life seeking. Meaning, and when a man feels that with you, he will return, again and again, not out of habit, but hunger, the mirror of wholeness, seeing what he can't yet see. Every man walks through life with pieces of himself scattered behind him. Parts he's never met, parts he's forgotten, parts he's ashamed of. Carl Jung called this the pursuit of individuation, the deep inner journey of becoming whole. But most men, they never fully take that path. Why? Because they're waiting for something, or rather, someone. A woman who doesn't just reflect their light, but reflects their totality. This is the sixth and most powerful trigger of all. The woman who becomes a mirror of wholeness. She sees the strength and the insecurity, the ambition and the fear, the laughter and the silence. She sees it all and doesn't flinch. She holds space for the contradiction because she's made peace with her own. Isabella was 61 when she came to me. She'd just gone through a painful divorce and wasn't looking to date, but she was ready to know herself again. She dove deep into shadow work. She journaled. She cried. She stood naked emotionally, spiritually, energetically before herself. Months later, she met someone, a quiet man, rugged, brilliant, guarded. At first, he kept things light until she said one night, "You don't have to impress me. I see you." He looked at her frozen, like he'd been heard in a language he didn't know he spoke. That was the beginning. She didn't coddle him. She didn't try to fix him. She witnessed him, his past, his pain, his joy, his dreams, his flaws. And for the first time in his life, he said, "I feel like you're holding all of me, and I don't have to break apart." Their intimacy wasn't perfect. It was true. It stayed alive, evolving, renewing. Even 3 years in, their connection still pulsed like something new. Why? Because she kept seeing him, not just who he was, but who he was becoming. Academic circles have debated whether relationships should complete us or merely complement us. Jung would argue, the most powerful relationships mirror our potential, not through control, through recognition. Here's something strange. In quantum physics, there's a theory called the observer effect, that observing a particle actually changes its behavior. Now think about that in love. When you look at a man not to judge or to fix, but to see, you change him because, for the first time, he experiences himself as whole through you. But here's the caveat. You can't mirror wholeness in a man if you haven't met it in yourself. This is why the deepest attraction work starts within. The more you own your own contradictions, your rage and your grace, your fire and your forgiveness, the more you can recognize those same forces in him. It's not about becoming a goddess. It's about becoming real, rooted, clear, soft, wild, whole. From that place, your presence becomes medicinal, a mirror not of fantasy, but of truth. And here's the quiet miracle. When a man feels seen this way, he doesn't just want you. He needs you, not as a crutch, but as a compass. You become the reminder of his own possibility, the whisper of who he could become, the bridge between his fragments and his fullness. And that kind of bond is not easily broken. It is desire transformed, sexuality transmuted into soul. It is no longer about the chase. It is about belonging to himself, to you, to something bigger than either of you. And it begins the moment you say, I see all of you, and I still want to stay. Integration, power, and the gentle responsibility of awakening a man. So here we are. You now hold in your hands something rare, a truth too deep for trends, too sacred for seduction tactics. Jung's 6 forbidden triggers weren't just insights into male desire. They were portals into human wholeness. You've seen how a man's deepest longing isn't for the perfect body, the wittiest reply, or even the most intense chemistry. What he truly longs for is recognition, safety for his shadow, resonance with his anima, mystery in your multitudes, a mirror for his hero, a taste of transcendence, and finally, a reflection of his wholeness. But here's what I want you to remember. This journey doesn't start with him. It starts with you. You can only see his shadow if you've embraced your own. You can only stir his mystery if you've explored your own contradictions. You can only awaken his inner hero if you've honored your inner queen. And you can only reflect wholeness if you've stopped running from your own truth. This is not a call to perform. It's a call to presence. You don't need to be anyone else. You don't need to memorize techniques or wear a different face. You simply need to become deeply, unapologetically, beautifully you, and let the fullness of that presence do what it was always meant to do. Awaken the men who are ready, and walk away from those who aren't. The power you hold is not in your ability to attract. It's in your ability to transform. And when you do this work, when you awaken these 6 keys in your own life, you don't just change relationships. You change everything. You begin to move through the world with a softness that holds steel, a gaze that melts armor, a voice that calls men back to themselves. You become unforgettable, not because of how you look, but because of how you see. And now, it's your turn. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope today you find a quiet corner to continue that silent conversation with yourself. And don't forget to subscribe. There are many more videos to come about dreams, the shadow, and the hidden corners of the soul waiting for you ahead.